Junior.
Okay.
Yeah, now here we go.
Okay, Your Honor, you ready to proceed?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. So item B tonight is the zoning map amendment for the Varnedo-Wiggins Tract Phase 2 on Highway 21.
Okay, this public hearing is now open. Anyone here to speak for or against?
Against. Mr. Mayor, my name is Phil.
Against.
I'm here on behalf of Ms. Meadows and Mr. Varnedo, brother and sister, who own this property. And I'll start off with a couple of introductory remarks. This is not a specific development plan to be planned all the way to the nth degree, which I think some people think it should be. This is a preliminary general site plan to go along with rezoning. It's not a specific development plan. Also, this is phase 2 only. Phase 1, the rezoning is complete. The differentiate between, I'm going to address traffic and sound or noise. And I've got a couple of experts to address some other issues. You know, we have normal development concerns like stormwater, but there's been a lot of other issues raised that some are legitimate, some frankly aren't, and we decided we needed to address those. So I've got Gerald Pouncey, environmental attorney, to address those issues. Chad Zittrouer, our civil engineer, will speak for a few minutes. We also have Allison Brown, our wetlands consultant here, if anybody has any questions. We have Leah Moore from Terracon, who did our noise study, if anybody has any questions about that. After Gerald and Chad speak, I'll wrap it up. And as you know, I'm not very long-winded, but I'll have a few comments at the end. The first thing is traffic. And I've handed you a booklet, I think 6 tabs. I've got some extra ones here. I think people have been getting them, which is great. I want everybody to have the information. And the first tab has to do with traffic. As we know, the port is growing. As we know, there's a lot of traffic on Highway 21. Development is expanding, not just in Chatham County and Fort Wentworth, but also in Effingham County. In the last 2 months, over 800 acres have been rezoned off Old Augusta Road for industrial development. I know of 3 other rezoning applications right now on Old Augusta Road in Effingham County, which is right across the border, for, again, industrial development. So there's going to be traffic coming out 21, and it's up to the state to improve 21, which they're going to have to do. It's not up to any individual developer. We can't do that. Only the state can, add an extra lane to 21 or whatever they might think needs to be done. Since all the traffic's coming, then the citizens of Fort Wentworth might as well reap some of the benefits of the development. In this case, we estimate $700,000 in real property taxes to go into the city's coffers every year. $3.2 million goes to the school board every year for real estate taxes. In addition, we've had mentioned several times tonight of the impact fee ordinance, and that's being worked on. By state law, you have to have some developer representatives on the committee, and Chris Hayes from our organization, the developers organization, has driven out in Atlanta on several occasions to work on that committee. So we are supportive of the impact fee ordinance. We intend to pay our fair share, whatever that ends up being from the impact fee ordinance. And I think that will help put money in the coffers of the city for a number of capital improvements. So, while the state has to fix 21, we've got to fix our own, we have to handle the traffic that's generated by our own development. And we have a traffic study, several pages of which are there, tab 1 from Kinley Horn, excellent company. And they've suggested improvements to both, besides what the state is already doing at Highway 30 and Highway 21, which we will do, and also some improvements obviously at the Lakeside Boulevard site access, which we will do. And this large zip down here basically shows access that we will create across from Rice Post entrance into the commercial area there. The only thing different is that when we finished, we did this before, the study was right-hand lane, two right turn lanes coming out of our site. And so we'll certainly do two right turn lanes coming out of the site as well. So, we will handle the traffic. Other benefits, besides the tax revenue and the impact fee revenue, is the light at Rice Hope. I get Creek and Hope mixed up, I apologize. At Rice Hope will stop traffic. It'll help people get out of Rice Hope more safely. It'll also stop traffic. One of the ladies that spoke at the planning commission meeting last week indicated she has a hard time getting out of 21 in the morning, which I understand. And having traffic like there at the boulevard will stop traffic and allow another, open space where people coming out of Berry and Saussy and the other road can get out into traffic. So there is a benefit there to have that break in the traffic. Another thing that's very clear is there will be absolutely no traffic on Saussy Road or Berry Road. Matter of fact, I would suggest some restrictions or conditions on going toward the end. And two of the restrictions or conditions are no traffic at all on Saussy, no traffic at all on Berry. So all the traffic will come out on Highway 21. A number of people have expressed that they just don't want me. He's got some more lots. But when those two get built out, if this property is not rezoned, it stays RA, then we've got 400 acres in phase 2 of uplands, of high ground, zoned RA, don't have to rezone it. Under your ordinance, and these information is in your tab 1 here. Under the ordinance, you can put, you have 8,000 square foot lots. So you can put 5 lots per acre. So that's 2,000 homes potentially could be built on this site through years, over time. It will take years to do it, but it certainly will be done. Something has to be done on the property. And if you develop 400 acres for residential use, then the last page in tab 1 shows you the amount of trips that you'll get from that many houses, which would be almost 20,000 trip-ins. That means 10,000 coming in, 10,000 coming out. So when you see 19,331, that doesn't mean that many cars per day. It's half that, so it's in and out, which is more than twice what this industrial development will generate, which is around 9,000 trips in phase 2. So, and out of those 9,000, about 70% will be cars and the rest will be trucks, all of which will come out on 21. If the property is developed, this phase 2 is not rezoned, it's developed for residential, but that traffic will not come out on the same entrance across from Lakeside, because that would be an industrial boulevard to serve industrial uses. So where the traffic will have to come out, those 19,000 homes, is on Saussy Road and Varnedo Road. Those are the two rights to serve this property, this tract of land. And so when people say we don't want anything to go there, they have to be realistic that something's going to go there, and if it's houses, it's going to be a ton of traffic on their roads, and we think they'd be much better off with no traffic on Saussy and Varnedo Road. Next, we want to talk about sound. This is tab 2. Your ordinance requires not much sound to escape to the adjacent property line. 55 decibels. You see the chart here at the beginning of tab 2. A refrigerator makes 50 decibels of noise. Your refrigerator in your kitchen, you know what that sounds like. Two people talking, watching TV together at night, not hollering at each other, just talking, is 60 decibels. So somewhere between two people talking and a refrigerator, maybe a hum, is 55 decibels, and that's the requirement under the ordinance. So it's not impossible to reach, but it takes a good bit of planning. And in this case, we have distance, tree cover, and a berm we've created. The second page of tab 2 indicates or shows that the 55 decibel line, which I highlighted in the dark marker there so you can see it easily, does not get within 400 feet of a adjacent property's property line. So the 55 decibels is 400 feet away, so it's less than that when you get to the Robinson home or the Benton home, which are the closest homes I believe that they are. So we did, I think, an excellent job on this plan of ameliorating the impact of the noise from the industrial uses. The engineer has, the consulting engineer for the city has approved both the traffic study and the noise study. His letter of approval is at tab 3, and all he says is that the development impact assessment requirements have been met. He wants the improvements that our traffic engineer required to be built, some of which will require DOT approval, and he wants the improvements that we offer to build to reduce the noise built. With those two things, he approves the development impact assessment. So I think that's traffic and that's noise, which we're very proud of that we handle both of those, we believe. The number of environmental issues, frankly, are beyond the scope of my ability. I'm not an environmental lawyer, so I got Gerald Pouncey, who is a preeminent environmental lawyer in the state, to review what's been put forward on the internet and meetings and come up with our response to these various perceived problems. Mr. Pouncey heads the environmental section of Morris, Manning, and Martin. I'm just going to read 2 or 3 things. He's got a 4-page bio. I don't know how he sleeps at night. There's so much going on. But from the environmental perspective, he's a board member of the North Georgia and Metropolitan Atlanta Water Management District. The Best Lawyers in America publication named him the Environmental Lawyer of the Year for 2017. It's quite an accolade. He's the chair of the Environmental and Toxic Tort section of the Atlanta Bar Association, and he's on the Environmental Committee for the Atlanta chapter of the Urban Land Institute, which is the preeminent land planning institute in the country. So, Mr. Pouncey certainly is qualified to address the environmental issues, and I'd ask him to step forward and do that after he finishes. And Chad's going to say a few things. Chad's in our workshop each morning.
And Your Honor, can you note that they only got 10 minutes? So can somebody make sure they only got 10 minutes?
Right.
So per the ordinance, they only got 10 minutes, and they only got like 2 or 3 left.
Oh, okay.
So the public,
Let me respond to that. The ordinance says you'll get a minimum of 10 minutes. That's what the zoning procedures law also requires. A minimum of 10 minutes, not a maximum.
Thank you. That means everybody gets a minimum of 10 minutes. Thank you.
Mr. Mayor, City Councilmen, and City Councilwomen, it's good to be here today. Thank y'all for hearing my comments. I have been asked by the applicant to address some of the environmental issues that have been raised that are alleged to result in from the development that's proposed. And as I looked at them, basically, I think they break down into 6 items that are listed. And what I'd like to do is take a few minutes and address those 6 items.
Okay.
The first one that I understand is the allegation is made that the filling of wetlands at this site is going to occur, and that will result in a violation of the Clean Water Act, the Federal Clean Water Act. Now, as most of you know, you can't fill any wetlands in the state of Georgia, jurisdictional wetlands, without obtaining a permit from the Army Corps of Engineers, which actually I think their office is 8 or 10 miles from here. Since Savannah, I've been to it many times, and so they'll have candidly someone that's locally reviewing that permitting process. And there are 2 or 3 key things about that wetland permitting process with the Corps here. One is there has to be an effort to mitigate any filling of wetlands, and to the extent the wetlands are filled, you have to have some mechanism for creating additional wetlands or buying into wetland mitigation banks so that the same value of wetland quality and quantity exists. So I note that first. Second is, and this may come to something which I saw raised in a number of the comments, and that is concerned about the effect on drinking water. That has to be, when you apply for federal wetland permit under Clean Water Act Section 404, the state will make its own determination, has to make its own determination, certification, that it doesn't have an adverse effect on water quality. So in addition to the Corps carrying out activity here and the permitting process that takes place, in addition, you got the state having to make a certification that it doesn't adversely impact water quality here in the state. So those, I think, are 2 key issues from the permitting standpoint. The other is, as public process. You have public comment, you have public hearings, there's an opportunity to raise your objection to any of that wetland impact during the course of those hearings. That's a significant part of the public component that is built in for the wetland permit process. And finally, I would note, the applicant has already been working with the Corps of Engineers to determine a delineation to identify what wetlands actually exist on the property, jurisdictional wetlands. In fact, I think as of yesterday, they obtained a certification of jurisdictional determination approved by the Corps of where wetlands exist and where you don't have jurisdictional wetlands on the property. But once again, all of those, that's a permit process that, as any of you know, have gone through the wetlands process is an exhaustive process. The second category of items that I understand to be alleged is that is a general allegation that the stormwater from the site will violate the purposes of the Georgia Water Quality Control Act. Now, that law, separate from the wetlands law, that law is delegated down to the states, and there has been a general construction permit that has been issued by the state, which sets forth a whole host of best management practices that must be followed with respect to stormwater discharge. In addition, as you know, the local jurisdictions are able to also adopt stormwater practices, management practices. In fact, here in the city, there's a very significant ordinance. It's chapter 7, the ordinance here, that lays out very specific requirements that must be followed with respect to stormwater discharge. And it would be the duty and responsibility of the applicant to follow all of those stormwater discharge requirements. The third category is an allegation that the development itself will somehow affect the drinking water quality here in the city. I know 2 or 3 things about that. One, there's no intention of putting any type of groundwater withdrawal or groundwater injection systems as part of this development. So nothing is reaching down into the Floridian aquifer. 2, I would note that with respect to any impact on drinking water, virtually all, I think the last figure I saw was around 97% of the drinking water for the city here comes from an intake at Ebenezer Creek. That is significantly upstream from where we would be obtaining from this development. So that would not be impacted by any withdrawal from that particular stream.
I object because the water quality report says that otherwise.
Hold on just a minute, sir.
I'm sorry.
Hold on. That's Abercorn Creek.
Excuse me.
Okay.
The fourth issue I would note was with respect to the federal, there's an allegation that the development will violate certain executive orders, federal executive orders. All of those executive orders that are mentioned are directed toward federal agencies as opposed to private parties or municipalities. And in fact, one of the executive orders that's identified specifically says it does not govern federal decisions regarding wetland permits. So in that instance, there's specific authority in the executive order itself that it doesn't apply to federal wetlands permits. That's the responsibility of the Corps and these state agencies. Final 2 things I would note. There's discussion that that the development will violate the Georgia Natural Resource Area Act because it would constitute a development of natural area, and that's defined from natural area. I would point out that to be a natural area, you must be designated a natural area by the Georgia Department of Natural Resources. This area is not designated a natural area by the Department of Natural Resources. So that act doesn't apply to the development and the land that we're discussing here. And the final note that I would provide here is that there's been an argument or allegation that development in the floodplains would somehow affect the drinking water that's provided city. You are, I'm no doubt aware that there are significant ordinances in the city itself which relegate development in floodplains with the design to ensure that there's no adverse effect on flooding and flood controls in the city. So that clearly would be subject which would be subject to regulation of the city and ensuring that that's not take place. So those are the 6 items that were noted. I'll step back and take any questions regarding those.
Okay, anyone have any questions? Go ahead, Mr. Bennett.
All right,
Step forward there.
yes, sir.
State your name, sir.
All right, LaRae Benton, 135 Saussy Road. All right, so, Mr. Pouncey, like, so you're an attorney, so you're not a scientist, correct?
I was a chemical engineer in past life.
Okay, you're a chemical, okay, I'm a nuclear physicist, okay, PhD. Right, now, so you stated that water does not, you stated that your development is not gonna reach down into the aquifer, okay? Any scientist would know, all right, through the process of not only displacement, that's how wetlands work, is the wetlands actually collect the stormwater, and it actually purifies the water down to the aquifer, right? And correction, in the water quality report, the city actually gets the majority of this water from the upper Florida aquifer. Only Southport Wentworth, that's the only area of Port Wentworth that's actually connected directly, and they get their water from the city of Savannah. Everything in North Port Wentworth, it actually comes from the upper Florida aquifer. Right? So with that being said, your statements are not true.
Mr. Bennett, you got that backwards, sir.
Okay, but the whole point is, we get our water, the city gets our water from the aquifer, period. Right? And the wetlands does bring that.
Yes, sir, from the city of Savannah.
Well, that's not what you were supposed to on the water quality report. But I'll address that later, right? But also, you also said that, in terms of the wetlands, in terms of the Clean Water Act, right? Now, are you aware that the city's own ordinance actually states that no one can actually block a ditch or a canal, or actually build a disturbance or obstruction within both wetlands and canals? Are you familiar with that? Because you're a lawyer, are you familiar with that section of the ordinance? And I'll address it. It's actually stormwater, right? Section 7-1. So are you familiar with that? So again, to your point, right? To your point, right? Is your development going to block the ditch and the actual canal? Because as you actually have it designed here, right? You actually have designed here, the Saussy Canal actually flows through 9 of your 12 buildings. 9. Right? So again, how is your proposed development, all right? How is it legal? Because right now you're violating the statute of the city. Not even the state yet. I ain't even got to the state, but the city. So can you address that, please?
Is there anyone here to address it? Mrs. Zittrouer was going to address that. Okay.
You can address that
Okay,
now.
hold on. I got another question for you. All right, so also, you actually stated that you actually got an updated.
Hold on. Let him answer that first question.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. Thank you very much. Come on up.
Mr. Zittrouer?
This is my area. I'm a scientist, so I got you.
Yes, sir. Would you like me to address the questions or go through with my presentation, or what would you prefer?
Let's go with the questions first. Go with the questions.
So in regards to, the question about the canal and what we tend to do with this, the Port Wentworth ordinances, in their flood hazard ordinance, as you're aware, they specifically indicate requirements that are required for both the application, for the application and the construction as it pertains to development into the flood ordinance. As that relates, there are requirements as far as finished floor elevations that have to be established. There are procedures that you go through and what you're required to do if you're going to impact a ditch or change it. That has to go through FEMA, has to go through that review process. So what we're here for tonight is a zoning application. This is not a development permit. This is not a permit to go back and impact canal. We've indicated in our DRI that we intend to pursue a wetland permit. This is a step towards that. We're going to proceed with the development permit, or with the wetland impact permit. Once we're able to obtain that, we're gonna come back with structure documents and go through the development permit process. As part of that development permit process, there are requirements by the state, by the city of Fort Wentworth, in your flood ordinance that tells us exactly what we have to do, what we have to certify, and what we have to provide in order to comply with your ordinance. So that's the responsibility.
Okay, hold on. So, what you actually, but you still haven't asked my question. My specific question was, as planned, does all 12 of the buildings, actually all 13 of the buildings that you have in your plan, both phase 1 and phase 2, because it's all composite, right? Do you plan to remove the Saussy Canal and build those buildings within the actual flow of the Saussy Canal? It's a straight question.
Yes, I do.
That's a yes or no answer.
So, I mean, is that an affirmative? You are going to want to remove the canal?
He ain't answered the question.
Because it's a specific question.
Please say
And
yes.
hold on. No.
Allow people to berate somebody who's trying to speak.
No, he ain't trying to rate.
He didn't clarify the original question. I'm sorry.
Again, I don't know if I introduced myself earlier, but Chad Zittrouer, Kern Company is part of this development. And so what you see here is an exhibit of the location. The existing canal is shown as purple, kind of where the flow of that canal goes. Go through the development, come to this nature. It flows out into Black Creek, kind of makes a loop horseshoe area coming all the way back around, through, across the Saussy Road, back through some of the properties along Saussy Road.
Thank you.
Back onto our property, back to Black Creek, back to 21. In regards to the existing conditions on the canal, there are 6, 8, 12 larger trees that are growing up in it. There are numerous trees that are down over the top of it. They are, detrimentally blocking drainage, which is part of the drainage problems that are being, had on, in this neighborhood as it's referred to now. As part of our development plan, we're doing two things, or we intend to do two things. This is not done until we go through and get U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permits, until we provide the necessary documentation in conjunction with our development permits, and before we can do it. But in doing that, we will reestablish the location of the canal. The reestablishment of the canal will do two things. One, it'll provide a straighter conveyance shot to get it out to Black Creek. It improves the managed coefficient, which is the runoff coefficient that allows water to flow through the canal. Right now, it's heavily vegetated with woods. Your flows are blocked, and you can't get it flow through. We will, clean it up. It will provide a better flow rate because of the improved conditions. In addition to that, there will be a maintenance component. Right now, the canal is not maintained. There's no way to get, equipment in there, clean it up, mow it, any of that, because it's so overgrown. So with the establishment of the new location of the canal, it'll be adjacent to a road or somewhere along those lines, and convey the water to it. Now, one indication will be, well, if you utilize that canal, make those improvements, that water's will back up onto us, you will continue to flood us. And so what we're doing as a component of this is we're taking a canal and flowing it directly through, all the way through our property, from Saussy to Black Creek. In conjunction with that, we're gonna take our stormwater runoff, we're gonna put it into detention basins. Those detention basins will withhold the water and then discharge into the canal so that the water's holding up and not flooding upstream and downstream of the canal. That complies, it's, part of meeting the ordinance requirements that are intended. And so to answer your question, yes, we intend to relocate.
That's the answer you wanted to figure that.
Okay, follow-up question. Same. So you just stated that when you build all this, water's supposed to flow into Black Creek, right? And that the water and pretty much the on-site water, right? That's you want to retain it on site, right? That's what you just stated, correct? I might be paraphrasing, but in general, my question is this: have you actually done a hydrology analysis? Has an actual engineering hydrology report been done for the entire site?
If you read through the documents required for the zoning application, there is not a hydrological analysis required to be submitted in conjunction with the zoning application. However, if you proceed to the stormwater ordinances and regulations, when you get down to the development permit application, you are required to comply with that and provide the necessary documentation for it.
So my answer is no. So again, if you haven't done a hydrology analysis, because hydrology deals with water, hydro, right? How do you know? How How do you know where the water's gonna go?
Ray,
He answered the question. Mr. Benton, you got to calm down. He answered your question. He answered your question. All right, thank you, sir.
Mr. Mayor, I got a question.
Okay.
While we're at that chat, and I studied a lot the last 3 days. I've been all over this, and I saw where we're gonna straighten it out, and because of so many years of Saussy Canal, and I know I'm talking to Ms. Benton, many years of it being.
Ain't never been
we're gonna
fixed.
straighten out. I read a lot of that. My question is, and this is an attorney question, you referred that you have to go to FEMA and have to get their permission. Is that what you were saying? Did I catch that, FEMA, or you have to go to FEMA to get the?
There's a location in your ordinance that refers to documentation being sent to FEMA in regards to, getting a building out of the floodplain or different requirements. They're called LOMAs, LOMA R, for floodplain removal, things of that nature. So there is some documentation that has to go to FEMA, but obviously not something you would do during a rezoning process. But, during the development phase, yes, they require coordination with FEMA.
I got a question, sir.
Council got a question first.
So this development, if it was approved and you put the development in, isn't it fair to say that to actually put the development in, you'd have to meet all federal and state requirements?
Thank you. I'm about to ask that question.
Would that not be fair to say?
Unless we wanted to go to jail, yes, sir. We would
Thank
have to
you.
have
All I
all
need
the
to know,
regulations.
thank you, sir.
All right, Ms. Benton, you want to speak?
Yes.
I got a couple more things.
Okay, go ahead. Let Chad finish.
Okay, I'll let him finish.
All right, thank you.
Yes, Mr. Mayor and council, anything else that I can ask? What I attempt to do is walk through fairly quickly Councilman, what you just mentioned, and that is the number or the myriad of federal and state and local laws with which we have to comply, and the permitting which we have to accomplish before the first building come out of the ground.
They didn't invite him. He did include the law where we didn't have water and sewer.
Council, question. Throughout this permitting process, is the public allowed access throughout the process?
Particularly the wetlands permitting process, there is extensive public comment and public participation allowed in that. So the issues that you have heard and raised, the hydrology issues you have heard and raised, whether there's a confining layer that prevents water from moving down into the foot and aquifer, all of those issues would be addressed as part of the permitting process with public comment, with public participation, and almost always with public hearing.
All right, Chad.
You got a comment?
Would you like me to finish up my remarks, that way we'll be done with the road and impact? Sorry? Would you like me to finish my remarks and then we'll be done with the people's presentation?
Okay.
All right. The fourth tab is next. There's been a lot of comment about how this neighborhood is being treated unfairly, unlike other neighborhoods in Fort Wentworth.
It is true.
Please don't bear that out. If you look at the fourth tab, we'll go through about 3 other recent developments, all of which I've been a part of. In 2020, there was a tract of land north of Rice Creek that was rezoned for industrial use. If you look at the second sheet there, it'll show you how close that tract was or is to houses built in Rice Creek. It's adjacent to them. If you look back at the first page of tab 4, you'll see that there were no trees. At the back of those houses, there were no trees. There was 530 feet of distance to the building. We put up a berm which took care of the noise, but the folks in those houses will see the top of the building's 530 feet away. But that's that neighborhood. It happens. As a matter of fact, I was riding around in the rain yesterday at Rice Creek. Not this building because it hasn't started yet, but closer to Highway 21. On the other side of the property line is Effingham County, and there are existing warehouses that are 300 or 400 feet away, clear ground, no berms, no trees, no nothing, and they're building houses like mushrooms. So obviously, it's not bothering folks on that end of north end of Rice Creek near 21. That there's some warehouses off in the distance. And most ordinances require 100-foot buffer between industrial use and residential use. People build industrial uses within a certain distance of residential uses, and that's an example of how that's, the warehouses are there first and the houses are going in there now. If you go to the third sheet, there's a tract on Northgate, on the north side of Crossgate Road. In that instance, we didn't put up a berm to knock down the sound because we had 700 feet of distance of trees. But that is not, that's near Old Port Wentworth neighborhood. So that's another neighborhood where industrial zoning was approved in 2019. The last sheet is even more telling. In 2016, on the south side of Crossgate Road, there was a large rezoning approved, and there's no distance, no trees. What there is berms, which help with the sound, but certainly folks living in Old Port Wentworth would see the top of these buildings, where I'll demonstrate people living here on Saussy and Darien Roads won't see anything, and Grant Street won't see anything. But so those are three examples, all of which I was involved in, where rezoning has been done. So to say that this neighborhood is being picked on is just not factual. If you go to the next sheet, I'll show you some distances and what we've done to protect the Saussy Road and Grant Road neighborhoods. The area in red dash, there, that's land we're going to buy. We're going to own it. We're not rezoning it. We're not going to develop it. It's just extra buffer between this neighborhood and the property that we are going to develop. The distance from the Benton home to the edge of the Georgia Power right-of-way is 545 feet, all trees, all trees. The distance from the Benton home to the nearest warehouse is a little over 1,000 feet, okay? The distance from Mr. Robinson's house through toward the nearest warehouse, there's 220 feet of trees before you get to the Georgia Power right-of-way. And the distance to the building is 855 feet. Marion Road is almost 1,900 feet away from the nearest residence. So, again, when you compare it to the other three situations where I just showed you, this is the best situation of the four of them. A lot of distance, a lot of trees, and a berm. We didn't have to put up a berm because the distance of the trees would have kept the sound from being bad. And remember, the line of 55 decibels I showed you.
Well, I need to ask,
that's 400
is
feet
there
away
any
from
other,
anybody's house.
was there
So
any
you
other
don't hear
location
anything going on this side.
available for them to develop this
The last
property?
picture that I
What's your
took,
question?
Yeah. I'm
in
asking.
tab 5, in tab 4, is standing in the middle of Saussy Road. If you go back to the sheet before, I drew a star right there where I took this photograph. It's the closest driveway to our property. And I stood in the road and took the picture down Saussy Road. On the left-hand side, you've got 500 feet of trees, some of which belong to the Benton, some of which belong to us, which we will not develop or clear. On the right-hand side, you have approximately 500 feet of trees, some of which we own, some of which other people own. All of it's wet, so it's not going to be cleared, developed. We'll make that a condition, if you like, of no development on that property that we own. And down at the far end down the road, you can see a stand of trees, which is on the other side of that Georgia Power sort of switching station, or whatever it's called. And if that's about 1,000 feet away, so there you'd have a berm with trees on it, a vegetated berm. On the other side of that, you'll have a building. So that's how close the buildings will be. And so it's not, the only people who could see a building would be somebody who went out in the middle of Saussy Road. From anybody's house, you're not going to be able to see through the trees. You won't see a building, you won't see anything, you won't hear anything. Unless you go out in Saussy Road, you might see something.
Mr. McCorkle,
Yes.
that buffer, y'all put that right?
Sure.
Okay.
I'll add that as another condition. And another thing that came up was a discussion of whether this was going to increase people's property taxes. This development will
It will.
increase people's property taxes. And I knew it wouldn't because my firm handles more tax appeals than anybody else in the city. And we got the attorney who works for the Chatham County Board of Assessors, Abby Quillian, to write us a letter, which you'll see the last sheet in tab 4. The rezoning of a large undeveloped tract of land adjacent to or near residential properties would not impact the ad valorem tax valuation of the residential property. So there's no impact. Taxes aren't going to go up. I'm trying to put that to bed in case it came up again tonight. tab 5 are some conditions, we can add the, conditions that area that's showing the red dash line, would not be developed. But buildings of masonry construction, truck courts and truck drives, concrete, only, both of these are from dust, no dust. No access on Marion Road or Saussy Road. And you can add the conditions that area that's shown on that plan, in the red dash lines would not be developed, cleared, nothing done with it.
Okay.
The last tab is, you're gonna hear a lot about the Constitution. And I've been doing this 47 years, and I've never heard anybody make a constitutional argument from the position of folks who aren't trying to get their property rezoned. The zoning ordinance restricts your use of property. Before 1961, you can do whatever you wanted to with your property. Everybody around Chatham County and the city, we adopted zoning ordinances, and the law says, that's fine, you can have a zoning ordinance, but it's gotta be constitution. You can't be unfair to a person and not let them use their property. And in about the time I started practicing law in the mid-70s, there were 2 cases, Barrett versus Tammy and Gould versus Hopeland Bridge Road. And they said it's a balancing test. And it's, I've highlighted it in yellow there on that sheet, that relative gain to the public as compared to the hardship imposed upon the individual property owner. That's the test. So we got Mr. Varnedo and Ms. Meadows who have a chance to sell their land at industrial value and do something else with the rest of their lives versus the public. And the question is, what benefit is it to the public for the Varnedos and Meadows not to be able to use their property and sell it as they see fit? I think we've handled the issues that the public could raise about, well, you know, what problems it would cause. We're not gonna put traffic, noise, not gonna see it, not gonna hear it. So I don't see the benefit to the public other than, and I understand this neighborhood's been there a long time, and they just don't want it. But just not wanting it pales in comparison to somebody's property rights. And so I think we've done a great job buffering any impact on the community. And I think failing to rezone the property would be a violation of due process and protection against Varnedo and Meadows. And I would appreciate a favorable recommendation. I'll be glad to answer any questions.
Mr. McCorkle, would you offer this in, I don't want to say into evidence, but into the record? Can we have the clerk identify?
My name is Clerk One, yes.
We have certain conditions. This is actually a conditional zoning application that you are offering up here, and you're referring to red lines. So I think we need to.
That's in the last sheet on tab
2, I think it is.
4. No. 4. Next to the last sheet before Ms. Queen's letter, before the photograph. So it's the sheet. I think it says at the bottom, SPH 21 LLC exhibit, aerial exhibit. The red dash lines on that sheet would be, we would agree not to develop.
I want the record to be very clear what you're referring to here.
Sure.
All right. Thank you.
Mr. McCorkle, and then, you know, they said they were worried about things being ghetto. There won't be no people living in this, so this would actually.
It's not being that.
They won't have to worry about the ghetto.
Well, we got questions. All we got questions.
Chad, you finished? I'm finished. I'm just, okay. Ms. Hampton, you can come on.
Question number 1. Janet Hester, 449 Hard Road. Or, by God, will.
Couldn't make it up if we wanted to.
You can. First of all, no one's talked about the criteria for rezoning. Okay, there are 6 criteria. Do you by chance have them in front of you? Anybody on council, mayor, attorney, clerk? Does anybody have the 6 criteria? Can you please read them?
Ms. Hester, do you want to explain what you want to tell us?
That is part of it, and I just need somebody to read it.
We need
You're welcome to read it.
I don't have it in front of me.
we'll give you my copy.
Okay.
crazy.
Thank you. Standards and criteria for making zoning amendments. Prior to making zoning amendment, the mayor and council shall evaluate the merits of a proposed amendment
That's it,
according to the following criteria. One, whether the zoning proposal will permit a use that is suitable in view of the use and development of the adjacent and nearby property.
That's it. Just answer my question.
Residential agriculture. Now, I'm gonna pause right there, and I'm going
To the
address
turn.
fact that these folks say
Mhm.
that this property has no other value and that these landowners have the right to sell and develop their land. And I will not argue that point. But they do not have the right to have it rezoned, to destroy the neighbors who live near them.
That's it.
They have a right to develop that land as is zoned.
Right.
They have no right to have it rezoned.
Right.
Two, whether the zoning proposal will adversely affect the existing use or a suitability of adjacent or nearby property. I believe the residents and the folks that are here tonight have already made that clear. Three, whether the property to be affected by the zoning proposal has a reasonable economic use as currently zoned.
No.
It can be developed into residential homes
Right.
as it is zoned. So yes, it has a value as it is zoned. Four, whether the zoning proposal will result in a use which will or could cause an excessive burdensome use, oh my God, of existing streets, transportation,
Yes, it will.
facilities, or schools. That is unquestionable, that it would not have a positive impact. Five, if the local government has an adopted land use plan, whether the zoning proposal is in conformity with the policy and intent of the land use plan. We all know that y'all don't pay attention to that land use plan, or you would never rezone Henley Road.
Mm-hmm.
We know your capabilities of ignoring that one. And six and final, whether there are existing or changing conditions affecting the use and development of the property which give supporting grounds for either approval or disapproval of the zoning proposal. Now I'm gonna say to that final point of your own criteria. You have a decision to make tonight. And I know you're glaring at me, Linwood, I don't care. You're not intimidating me. None of you intimidate me. And here's the reason. Because you have a decision to make. You needed to make this decision last year in June. All this city, and I'm sure Mr. McCorkle will soon file a suit against the city for something, because that's all it takes for you all to cave, is for somebody to file a lawsuit against you. Okay? Now, the bottom line is, are you going to be a mayor, council, manager, attorney, clerk over a city of warehouses? Or are you, it's your job though, are you going to be a mayor and council and leaders of a city of warehouses or people?
Thank you, Ms. Estes.
Because of this tonight, in your decisions, you're forcing me, and I'm gonna announce right here tonight that I'm running for Mr. Linwood's seat come November.
Amen.
That announcement right now.
Amen. Hold on. I'm speaking after her.
Yeah.
135 Saussy Road. I'm not no attorney, but I do know
Right.
one writes in when infringement upon another rights begin.
Mm-hmm.
I know that. Now, my land is already being mitigated.
Yep.
Mr. Bobby, I must make a correction to the statement I gave you last time. You asked me, was water settling on my property? I told you no, because I was not able to get out to the perimeters of it to see it.
Mm-hmm.
I contacted the tax assessor office to want to know why my property went down $10,000. They informed me I now have an acre of wetland.
Yep.
Now, how that got there? We've been fighting that canal
All our lives.
be clean. I know since the early 90s.
Mm-hmm.
All right? I did not bring my plaque, my land survey, to show you. That canal has a 60-foot, at that time, county easement, which was transferred to Fort Wentworth.
Mm-hmm.
Half of that canal, sir, you plan on moving.
Yep. It was on my plan. Yes. Exactly.
So how you gonna remove something that's on my property?
Thank you.
Cause it shows on my plaque, my survey, that half of the canal is on my property line. So you need to talk to me if you gonna move something on my land.
Thank you.
Not only the Corps of Engineers, but we've been through the Corps of Engineers, haven't we, Mr. Robinson?
Yes.
We've been there. When the city tried to take over
Yes.
the wetland permit.
Yep.
We've been there. And the Corps of Engineers denied. And we cannot, now how are we supposed to trust y'all?
Mm.
When you sent a false document, not you per se, the city of Port Wentworth sent to the Corps of Engineers
Yes, right.
a false document
Mm-hmm.
with having him as mayor, and he left office in December, and the permit was permitted March the following year. That's the kind of stuff we deal with out here.
Yeah.
If you don't live out here,
Thank you.
You don't know what the black community deals with.
Thank you. Yeah.
Okay? And right now, I'm looking at an application that just was submitted on October 20th for a single person family home permit. And guess what it tells me? Heating space, 0. Bathroom, 0. Furnish, 0. Rent, 0. But yet, bedroom, 0. But yet, they got $185,000 value on it. Okay? Was it electrical approved? No. No mechanical improvement? No. And then they trust to put down a septic system with no type of drawing. That's what the permit says. No drawing of the system. And then they trust to block every log road in the woodland on Barrel Road. And then took and put a water tank on the road that's next to my property, which I own half of. Now, who approved it? But it's there. And it's just a metal building.
Ms. Benton?
It's just a metal building.
Ms. Benton,
Yes, sir.
appreciate everything.
Yeah.
Did you make,
Yes. So, what I'm saying is, if you go down Saussy Road now, you will see on my side of the property, the water is sitting in Saussy Canal.
Mm-hmm.
And it's flowing over onto my property. All of it. It's not going forward like it should.
Exactly.
But it's a 60 feet. You have the easement. You had the right to go in there and do what you needed to do.
Right.
He does not have the right
Exactly. Good job.
to go in there and move stuff on my land. Because he don't own it.
Thank you, Ms. Bell. Hey, you got a few minutes now, because you spoke quite a lot, so go ahead, sir.
No, hold on. Now, according to you, this is according to your
Sir,
ordinance.
I'm not gonna argue with you.
Well, I need to display it, so will it connect to my computer if
What exactly are you needing? You have a thumb drive?
I got a thumb drive and I got my computer, so I
Plug in your thumb drive and Mr. Eric will assist you.
Okay.
And while they're doing that,
Ms. Hester, you've already spoken, please hold on for a minute.
well, while they're doing
Ms.
that,
Hester, would you please sit down?
the onus,
Ms. Hester.
the onus is on you for not maintaining the canal that's a problem and a mess up there now.
You're not gonna disrespect this meeting, Ms. Hester.
No, sir, I'm not
You have,
disrespecting
you
it.
already have.
Please sit down.
Sit down.
Do you all have to print out packages for my presentation?
Yes.
Okay. Alright, how do you display it on the screen? Because I want to make sure the,
One moment, Mr. Chairman.
I'm sorry.
Take care.
Thank you, I'm sorry.
There you go.
Okay, so, first off, this is the plat of my parents' property, taken in 2005, way before the Varnedos even thought about developing the property. Alright, as you can see, and you got it in your hand, we actually own half of that property, right? Now, under Georgia law, right, we're getting in the Georgia law, right? Now, under Georgia law, in terms of Georgia Code section chapter 51, section 9-1, calls the action for interference with enjoyment of property. Alright, so, under Georgia law, right, my mother, alright, and me, as her heir, we actually have, it's called a quiet enjoyment of the property, right? And if you go down in terms of damages and continuing trespass into section 6 and section 7, so, under Georgia law, my mother owns half of the canal, right? But also under Georgia law, right, under quiet enjoyment, she actually enjoys everything in terms of the water flow of that canal, both in front of the canal, coming back off of 30, like coming off of Barron Road, all the way up above her property, going all the way down to Barron Road. I mean, going all the way down to Black Creek. Because the canal goes all the way to Black Creek, so under Georgia law, we have a quiet enjoyment of the entire waterway of the canal. That's Georgia law. I didn't write it. It's all right, that's Georgia law. Now, let's go down to Georgia law. All right, Georgia Code, section, chapter 51, section 9-7, says diversion, obstruction, or pollution of stream and trespass. All right, so, as a part of this Georgia ordinance, right, all right, and let me remind you, right, in terms of you, the council, right, you are actually empowered to actually enforce not only local law, your own local laws, but also state law, Georgia, and federal law, right? So I ain't even gonna touch the Clean Water Act tonight, right? So in terms of under Georgia law, they just stated on the record.
They're gonna
that
move
they plan to
remove the
entire
canal.
all the way down to Black Creek, which is illegal according to Georgia law. According to Georgia law. So again, by them making that statement alone, their entire proposal for both phase 1 and phase 2 is illegal.
Yep.
Right? And if you approve it, right, under Georgia law, you have aided and abetted, all right, in the violation of those exact same tenets under Georgia law. Because again, Ms. James, she just stated to y'all everything that needs to be that you need to consider. Part of that obviously is Georgia law, right? And their proposal does not match up to Georgia law. It violates all those sections that's on the screen right now, and you have before you, right? Additionally, right? Mr. McCorkle, well, I'm sorry, his high-class attorney he brought in here, right? He stated that in terms of the federal government and the federal law. So, according to Georgia law, right? And let me blow this up so I want the community to see, right? So, under Georgia law, right? Georgia law, under the Heritage Trust Act in 1975 and the Land Conservation Program, right? The local municipalities, which is the city of Port Wentworth, right? You actually have the jurisdiction, right, to actually decide what happens in all of the wetlands, all of the sewers, any waterway that is in your jurisdiction. This is Georgia law. You got it there before you, right? And in particular, right, because he didn't talk about the Georgia Land Conservation Program, right? He didn't touch on the heritage preserve transfers or the local authority. I've outlined it for you right there.
Got a couple of minutes.
All right? So, again, everything that they are proposing violates Georgia law. All right? Now, let's get into local law, right? Your own ordinances. And give me a minute, I'm trying to drive. This ain't my computer.
Okay. I got you.
All right, so let's get down to your ordinances. Our ordinances, City of Port Wentworth. All right, again, all right, drainage and flood, Chapter 7, Section 1. The first thing says up there, it says that you cannot place foreign objects in the drainage ditches. The Saussy Canal is a drainage ditch, right? Everything that goes up is a drainage. You can't do it. And again, if you approve this, you're violating your own laws that you put in place, right? Likewise, Section 7.2, blocking ditches. All right, so in terms of the drainage facility, all of the ditches along Saussy and Barron Road, Saussy Canal is a drainage facility for stormwater management process. I had to break that down because he's not cool over there.
Mr. Benton, we got you.
Right,
No, he not done.
We got to move on now.
Last point. All right, so,
Moving on.
okay, with the flood zone. Okay.
Well, let me speak
My
then.
point is, you have your own, you're violating your own rules.
We got it.
All right. Okay, any questions? Okay, go ahead.
I don't have a question, I got a statement. Mr. Benton, you heard me ask the question earlier tonight, because I did a lot of studying, apparently you have too, and I guess I got to trust you in Georgia law, because I sure can't read all that up there, and then.
But you got it in front of you.
You went off in that Georgia law stuff, so that's why I asked Mr. Zittrouer the question about the SEMA and FEMA, because they have to take care of it. Because if they deny that, and if you're correct, hold on. If you're correct by all your statements, by all them allegations, if you're correct, I know enough people that work for FEMA and SEMA also through all my years, and I guarantee you, if they see a log jam or something is wrong, they're not going to approve that. So what you're saying is we're okay with it. But you heard, that's why I asked Mr. Zittrouer personally if that's what he has to do, and you heard him again say that all this is just a start up.
I won't even start up.
So, no, you made your statement.
No,
You said all of that.
I'm not going to interrupt you.
So you said all of that, and to answer all your questions, if you're correct, and I have no reason to believe you're not, SEMA / FEMA, how will take over this, will be the ones who will tell Mr. McCorkle and his people that they can't do it. So we can hear, and we can go back and forth all day long about your rights, about where they're right, but the federal government, whoever's gonna come down and look at it is gonna be the ones that are gonna dictate to make that final
FEMA's not here tonight. We are making the decision.
You just heard him, Mr. Benton, you just heard him say that he has to send that off to get it taken care of. This is the preliminary startup.
I want to start the preliminary.
You have the local authority.
So it is.
Georgia
It's
law
the
just
local
says that.
authority that he is coming for a zoning map opinion, and they're gonna send it off to him. That is an easy thing to understand. If you're correct, they will be told they're not.
Okay, but
So I'm finished with all of that then.
I need a legal opinion because obviously your lawyer does need to weigh in on this because we raised Georgia law.
You put the Georgia law out there?
I got you.
Did you notice it said you can't block or put anything in the ditches, right?
Yeah.
But did you notice it didn't say anything about you couldn't move them or reroute them?
Actually it did.
No, it didn't.
Actually it did. Hold on, can I show it? I just want to, can I put it back up and show it?
See, their mindset is to prove.
The driver, put it back up.
See, their mindset is to prove the application, and that's not, you know. Right. You should not be able to make decisions without seeing the attorney being in the meeting.
Right? So,
That's not it.
hold on. You said no. In terms of moving it, right? You said in terms of moving it, right? Again, no. Listen.
You said the Georgia law with the canals. That's not the Georgia law.
And come down.
Listen, if you go down, right here, interference with
No,
rights.
that's interference with
No.
rights. That's
Hold on.
interference with rights.
No, okay.
Diversion.
No, but listen, the rights, like I stated, the rights of the canal, the survey just showed you, right? From a qualified professional engineer, so that's a legal document. It just stated that my mother owns half of the canal.
You say
right?
it's your property.
Right? Yeah, right. Half of the canal is my mother's property. Half of the canal is the Varnedo. Right? But in terms of interference with right of way of common and interference with rights above and below. When you look up that, right, and you actually look up the case law associated with that because I did.
So
right? Hold on. The rights actually extend, right, from the portion of the canal that my mother's own, and below that, that's why I said below, right? Below that, going all the way back towards 30, and above going all the way to Black Creek. That's Georgia law. So and again, that's why I said that your attorney needs
Exactly.
to weigh in on that on that because we are dealing with matters of the law.
Seeing what I'm looking at online right now, he's correct.
I got something to say.
Hold on, because they still got questions. Hold on, hold on. No,
Mr. Bennett.
See,
no.
but he got.
But it's my time. I'm trying to answer your questions. He can't interfere in me when it's my time.
Right.
He can ask me a question.
You got 2 more minutes. You got 2 minutes.
Thank you.
Get it done, please.
Exactly.
Okay. So again, right? We're talking about we're talking about ownership here, right? And again, according to Georgia law, I haven't stated federal law anything tonight, right? However, right, for the last thing, I do want y'all to understand this, right? In terms of your ethical and your fiduciary duty, right? You actually have a duty to apply both federal, state, and local law in the best interest of us,
right.
the residents. Because according to Georgia law, right here in front of you, in terms of the code of ethics, that all of you took that oath, right?
Yeah.
According to the Georgia Constitution and the U.S. Constitution, everything that you do, all of the decisions that you make, including approving or disapproving this zoning application,
Exactly.
you're supposed to do it in the best interest of the residents in terms of the current day state.
Yeah.
Right? And as Ms. Janice said, the current zoning of the property
It is
rural
right,
agricultural. You can't even consider this right now.
Right.
Because it doesn't conform with the
To-
previous master plan, which you all helped put in place. Because, well, those of y'all that was here helped put in place.
Yeah. Exactly. Good
Right?
one.
So I'm not telling you anything that you don't know already. Right? But the main thing about the aquifer, again, he stated that it wasn't effective. You're actually putting in industrial warehouses on top of wetlands.
Yep.
All the trucks that's coming through, you got oil, you got antifreeze, you got everything that they're storing there. Eventually, that is going to hit the ground, right? And that aquifer affects all 9,000 residents in this city.
All right, Mr. Benton, thank you very much.
Questions?
Mr. McCorkle, we got. He
I'm,
wants to speak. He
do
wants to speak.
y'all have any? I'm done. Do y'all have any questions?
No, sir. Mr. McCorkle, let this man right here speak. He's been raising his hand back there for a little while.
Well, I'll let him come up.
Everybody doing?
All right.
I'm here to talk for the people that gonna do the work. My name is Kern, and I've been knowing them for at least 3 years. And I listen to everybody talk about y'all have the water backing up in the yard. And I know those people, they're good people, whatever they say they can do it. And if the neighborhood will go and talk with them and let them know that they have a problem, I guarantee you they'll fix that flooding. And like y'all talking about that ditch, if y'all ain't got the money to fix the ditch, they're gonna fix it.
No.
They just gonna stay there, they ain't gonna get.
That's their problem.
You don't live in Fort Wentworth, you don't have nothing to
He
say.
just said that it was Fort Wentworth problem.
Fort Wentworth.
They said they gonna take and build, they can build a.
Okay.
You should be addressed.
Yeah, their issue. Yes. Where do you live at? You live in Saucy
What's your
Road?
address?
What's your, he doesn't just say his address.
Okay.
That gives the address.
Those people, they're good folks, and when they go talk to them, I guarantee you, they'll help them drain.
Child, please, no.
And I'm quite sure they'll help the neighborhood also. In the warehouse, you always claim that you can't see them, they got bumps and do all that. So I'm quite sure they'll be working with.
Can you need to call?
Right. Yeah.
State your name so we have your name, please.
Address.
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 What's your address, sir?
What's,
222 Big Avenue.
that's Garden City. You're not even in resident in the area.
Anyone else want to speak?
You.
Yeah. Now, for my census and your census, everybody have a gut instinct, right? You have a gut instinct, they have one, you know. And for even to consider application, for everything here negative thing, I wouldn't even consider application. Now, my guts tell me that this method ain't right. The reason I say it right, nobody has faith in counsel that you be truthful. Now, we always, why this thing always be picked on because before, this same neighborhood, to this council, that was here on Preston had to fight for water and sewer. Mm-hmm. Now, some of you weren't here. You were here, raise your hand.
They weren't here.
They weren't here. You weren't here.
No,
right? You
know
weren't
about
here.
it, though.
Good. But you know about it. You had to go all the way to Supreme Court for a natural equal right. Just a right. You provide one thing on one side, but just neglected the other side. Now, it took me and my brother to go to barbecue and
The Steels is, yep.
to raise money. We fed breakfast in our community, Richmond Baptist Church.
That's right.
You know, we traveled up the road, you know, with our state local congressman, you know, to go to help her right now. And we didn't have that in our back pocket. Ain't tell what would have happened. But God blessed us with knowledge and help support from our state and local government officials to fight the local council that's supposed to do the right thing for the citizens. Now, my brother said that you have a duty, right? Now, if you had your children, you have a duty, right? Would you want your children to go in a strip club? No. You have a duty, right? To protect them, right? Right. You know what I'm saying? Now, you also have a duty that you would, all y'all campaigning, and you took an oath and things like that. Now, if something don't, before I make a decision, some of y'all know you consult your attorney, if we are we doing it right. But even if I'm an attorney looking at it, it ain't right to me. It's just not right. This ain't even fair. Well, my gut instinct. Why do you gut? Your gut tells you, and some of you sitting here right now, knowing your gut sins tell you that is wrong, and the Lord tell you it's wrong. But some of you are making it in your mind that, oh, ask other questions as to prove this application. I wouldn't even prove the application if I'm you. If I'm on the other side looking this way, and I represent the community, you know, and I represent state, local government, whatever, as the municipalities, that application I ain't going to approve. It should not be approved. For all this I hear today is to protect what we have, the right thing. Now, if it's residential, yeah, it's zoned for residential.
Yep.
Now, I don't even have a children. Everybody community have children or grandchildren. You will have them too. There ain't no way you will have your children and grandchildren in a community where you got trucks, whatever they're going, commercial area where they're going, in a residential neighborhood. That's residential. Since we've been there, it's been residential. Now, opposed to the canal, that the city has not even done their due diligence with that canal. My brother stated, when I heard this state, if you have $1 million left in whatever operation, it needs to be done just for the local citizens, just to do right. All I'm asking you, do the right thing. You know, if your gut actually saying something is wrong, guess what it is? It's wrong. You don't even have to you don't even have to tell nobody. Your gut will tell you it's wrong. And my gut right now telling you this whole application, it won't even be approved. It's wrong. Now, on the other end, they for the bottom. They don't care what we got to do on Sauce Road and Barron Road. Now, they get paid, so they doing their job. Now, I ain't knocking that. But you got to do your job. And just do the right thing. The whole thing, since COVID and everything, we see a whole lot of cases, and we had a whole lot of lawsuits, a lot of them were done for whatever's going on in the community, throughout the United States, is people trying to just do the right thing. That's all people actually do is do right. If something, like again, something is wrong, it's wrong. If something is right, it's right. Now, you heard supportive evidence to help you make your decision.
All right, Mr. Bennett, thank you very much. Anyone else?
Go ahead. Go ahead. Oh, I'm sorry.
Land Jeffers, 222 Jeffers Road.
It's crazy.
If you will pass this, these people all today are underwater. The whole road's underwater. If you pass it, they 2 or 3 years from now, they'll come back and say, I sure appreciate it. Because the canal is stopped up over the 40 years or 50. Since the CC camp days, the canal stopped up right on through me. And if you pass this, then they will get relief from the water. Because they will ditch it, they will clean it. And that's all I got to say.
Oh, you will. Go ahead, sweetheart.
Hello, my name is Tanya Brown at 150 Berrien Road. I spoke on this at a previous meeting, and I don't want the warehouses near where I live. The young man mentioned that about the traffic and what the city is supposed to do with the traffic, and I can tell you it's horrendous trying to get out in the morning as it is. With the warehouses, and I'm repeating myself, the warehouses is going to bring more into the mix, and it's going to bring not only cars, because we were told that 800 employees would be there. It'll bring trucks. So now we have trucks to contend with, on top of the additional 800 employees that will work in these warehouses, on top of the traffic that's coming through from Effingham County, on top of the travelers that run up and down I-95, on top of the residents that live here. So I am against it because of the traffic that we have that has not been addressed. I am against it because I grew up here and I don't want it near my neighborhood. I don't want it here in my neighborhood. Build a house, that's fine. Build a house. He said 200 houses, that's fine. But I don't want a truck stop, a warehouse in my backyard. You wouldn't want it in yours.
They wouldn't want it in theirs.
No, definitely not. So, I mean, I know it comes down to money. Okay, they're gonna bring in some money to this city, and I know the city might need it, but there are better ways to get it. There are better ways that you could get it. I don't know who plans on the planning in the north, but come talk to us. And we'll throw some things out there, some better things, some better ways to make money.
Thank you, ma'am.
Good afternoon. I'm Patricia Bowers Cooper. We don't live on the land. We have 21 acres, and where you got it set up, we are landlocked in. We could never ever get an address for our property since we had it. Because my father farmed on it, and we had to take Saussy Road to go by, we call it the sister house. And then when we started trying to go down Jefferson Road, Mr. Jefferson blocked it off and throw nails and everything down there. And we went all the way to Washington and had them come down. And Chatham County said the principalities of this city, see, we had to deal with this, so they wouldn't handle it. So we've gone to every extreme to try to validate our property. I look at some of the material that you have there, where there's no rezoning, it's red and everything like that. So what we're supposed to do with our land, it's nothing. That's just all I got to say. You know, it's something to consider our property. And then whoever our representative, I live in Garden City, but it's nothing on the name because we farmed, we had a barn and everything out there, horses, cows, and all that. And then my daddy got old. We sold all of the livestock. And so we've been dealing with this. I know my dad's been dead 21 years. And we haven't got any resolution to our thing. Yes, sir.
Ma'am, I didn't know anything about this, but I'll definitely look into this and see if there's something we can do for you.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, she at the end of Jefferson Road, like the end of Jefferson Road.
Joneses are there too, we're the two.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Just put their feet up there.
With nails and everything.
Yes, sir. Germane engineering. I'll answer any questions you may have.
Okay, on all their permits and everything, where are they at?
Yes, sir. We have reviewed all the information that's been presented to us as far as the DRI information, the sound study, the traffic study, all those recommendations that we made for acceptance of the traffic study, to accept all the items and get items that are identified in the traffic study done. Also to get all the items in the sound study completed with the specific construction plans. At this point, everything that I've seen and reviewed meets requirements of the city of Portland.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
I'm gonna take very long. We're not building in neighborhoods where 2,000 people bury 1,000 feet from the house on Saussy Road. I can tell you that we will be required to comply with every federal law, state law, local law, common law, all the codes, all the ordinances. And I can assure you that if we don't, Mrs. Benton's not afraid to file a lawsuit. Since 2014, he's filed 20 in the state of Maryland and in federal court. So he can tell he wants to be a lawyer and he'll file a lawsuit. So we're gonna be on our P's and Q's.
It's called real estate development.
We're not gonna trespass on anybody's property. We're not gonna go on Miss Benton's property. We will make the situation better. And this is the first step. This is just the first step, so that we can move forward with actual planning on the drainage and all the wetlands and all the issues that we have to deal with. We know it'll take a couple of years to
public hearing is now closed. Anyone want to make a motion?
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve the zoning map amendment for Varnedo-Wiggins Tract phase 2 on Highway 21.
I move for a roll call vote. Okay, can I get a second?
We'll get a second first, Mark.
Can I get a second? Before we do that, if there's going to be a motion for approval, can we refer to this document with the conditions that have been offered by the applicant? Here they are, I believe. Yes, please.
All right, I'll amend my motion to approve the zoning map amendment for Varnedo-Wiggins Tract phase 2 Highway 21 with the following conditions to be adopted with zoning approval: the building of all masonry construction, truck courts and truck drives concrete only, no access on Berrien Road or Saussy Road. I can't read right. Number 4, berms. Number 5, I'm assuming this is red light, not developed.
The red light, or the red line,
The red line.
in tab 2.
I got it. Red line not developed, table 4, SBH.2/area not to be developed LLC.
Those are the conditions.
You got that, Ms. Shaw?
Yes.
Okay, can we get a second on the motion?
Move for a roll call vote.
Do we have discussion first? Mr. Mayor, you know, I stated about 3 months ago, probably the hardest thing I ever studied and to look at was the Henley Road tract because of the people who live there. And sometimes when I went and did a lot of studying on it and asked a lot of questions, sometimes I have to look at the best options. I know decisions I make are decisions I think are the best for the general purpose. Might not be the right decision, might not be a popular decision, but it's a decision I think you have to make. This time around, I had started doing the studying this process Tuesday night, and I had a lot of thoughts on it. I had a lot of studying on it, and then I go back and I look what's best for the community. Now, granted, look here, somebody referred to Ms. Steele. Ms. Steele was the first person I met down there when I first ran for mayor back in whenever it was. And she shared with me a lot of things, and then Ms. Benton, me and her have had a lot of conversations about Saussy Canal, and God bless her, I wish I could have done even more then. So then I started looking at this study and started seeing, and that was my biggest question, because I was the one who had considered and asked and talked about delaying this for a month so I could get some more information, until I started going out and getting that information myself and really studying it late last night and pretty much all day into the day, and even up till when I come out here, till I make a decision that I think that because of the fact that this tract of land has been here for hundreds of years, like the young lady said, and I hope the mayor will address her property, because that's, anybody being landlocked to her property is uncalled for. But the biggest thing is, and that's why I asked Mr. Zittrouer about that, about the canal, because he answered all the questions about whether they were going to be better or worse, or because I would never even sit here and think about approving something like this if I didn't think it would be better for the residents. I've walked that canal. I've been with Jimmy Ford back in the day. I've seen the rubble, and if these people here are going to, as some gentleman stated, they're going to make it better, because I've been there. I've been down in Mr. Robinson's neighborhood over there where it's been really bad. I hope I'm making the right decision by making sure that we're seeing the fruits of their labor that is going to help the residents. And I know the residents, and I'm going to state this
No, you don't.
on the record. And I know they're going to be upset with me the way we vote, but I hope And when all this is said and done, they'll look back and say, hey, this wasn't as bad as we first thought. I also looked at where the warehouses were, and I did a lot of study, and I've got a notebook full of notes here that I wrote down through here because I can't remember stuff. But when I started going back and looking at berms, that's exactly why a few months back, when I decided, because Mr. Robinson and his little group down there on Grant Road, they didn't want them townhomes right there between Colebrook and Saussy. Okay? And I agree with him, and I was the leader of stopping that because we didn't see any beneficial value of helping or hurting, especially when they wouldn't want to do what they were saying to do. But the reason, two things, is when I look where the warehouses are placed, and then I look at the 100-foot buffers, 15-foot high berms, 1,500 feet away from the nearest home, never seen it, never heard. Then I look at it, I start saying, what could happen, or what's the other thing that could happen? That's what I said over the Henley Road. What's the other that can happen? And what we want to do best, because guess what? If we deny this, then these people that are coming aboard, they have no right to ever go in there and fix the canal.
That's not true. That's not true because you have the right of way. You have the obligation and the right of way.
So I've said it, and I've said it, and I've said it. If the Corps engineers and FEMA, and whenever they go through all the process and they say it's illegal and they can't do it, when you're talking about federal and state and local laws, you have to believe in what they're going to do, but you got to believe in them laws. Now, you might not like them, but if they say they can fix it, make it better, that's what I'm going by. So, it's not going to be a popular position. I know I just made some enemies. But the bottom line is, I think by the studying, because I guarantee you say, sir, you've studied a lot of stuff. I guarantee you, this book that I read, or this thing, going through all the pages, I stayed up all last night. All last night. And I still was not satisfied.
There's no documentation of water flow.
To the point that I was the one that was asking if we could possibly delay it. And then when I got that basically turned down, then I said, well, I better get back to work. I better get back to work and start studying and looking at it some more. So, again, I've worked with Mr. Zittrouer for many, many years, and I trust in his belief. I've seen the work of Mr. McCorkle, and at the same time, I also believe in the people who are here in the city of Point, who have been here for years. Ms. Steele gave me all the history that I never knew about history. And I grew up right off Bonnet Ridge Road, and I'm 62 years and been in Point all my life. Except a few years when I went off to college. So I get it. And I feel for the people. And when you start talking about infringement on warehouses, you're never going to even see these warehouses. They're going to be so out of the way and out of the truck traffic. Look here. The truck traffic, look here. I work for Georgia Pacific and Ringgold. I ride Highway 21. When I come out on Augusta Road, right near the liquor store, that's where I meet traffic. No one got to tell me no more about traffic. No one has got to tell me about traffic. I know all about that traffic out there. And when you got all of these warehouses that are popping up, you got them over there on Augusta Road, and all the warehouses are popping up over there. They're going to come in that traffic until, as Mr. McCorkle stated, when they come in and 6-lane that highway, that's what we all going to be blessed by. If y'all, all the old people who know about when you went to Groves High School in 1976, there's a 2-lane highway coming through here. And we kept saying, we need a 4-lane highway. Now we need a 6-lane highway. So I get the traffic. But what I'm getting, and I hope in my prayer, as I vote for approval on this, is that in a few years, whenever it is, when this group goes in and says they're gonna do, because I'll tell you one thing, if it don't say what they say to do, I'm gonna be the first one and be on top of it and saying, where the hell are we at on fixing Saussy Canal like it's supposed to be?
But you'll be violating your own law.
So, again, if they say what they say, I'm not an attorney. Our city attorney is not profound in a lot of this stuff.
But the city attorney never gave an opinion.
But the city attorney will investigate and look into it. So you're asking him to answer a question that he may not be able to answer.
No, that's not. The city attorney, the people are calling for a city attorney to have an opinion.
So we holding these guys here to the fire. Mr. McCorkle's applicant. And that's why I'm voting for this. There's some things in here that I first looked at and I say, I'm not sure about. Because you know what? Mr. Robinson right there and his lovely wife are some of the dearest friends I know. And they are blessed. I am blessed to call them friends. And when you have the issues you have, and they're going to come back and make it better, that's what made me change my opinion, because again, Mr. McCorkle will tell you this morning at around 10 o'clock, I called in and asked him, would y'all consider delaying it? And I didn't, and that was an answer that they didn't want to delay it anymore. So then I said, okay, I'm not sure how I'm going to vote on this yet. But then I went back and I started reading and I started studying it. And I can only trust. Someone says you have to believe in the Lord and you have to do this. And trust me, I believe in the Lord and I've said my share of prayers on a lot of things that's happened in this city. And I'm going to trust in these people right here to make y'all's lives better when it comes to flooding. Now, when you come back and say about the warehouses, when you're not going to see the warehouses, and then when someone comes back and tells me, oh, the land has been there, it's our land, it's been in our land, it's been in our family for 100 years. Well, it would be there for another 100 years because you do not have the finances to be able to do something big. That's the way the world is. The people with the investments can be able to do stuff like this. And then when they go put in, whether you put warehouses in there or going to start putting residents in there, it does not matter. And let me tell you this. If they was to go and start building houses, and then what do you think Saussy Road would be at like that when they can start using Saussy Road? And on top of that, they would not be obligated to fix Saussy Canal because guess what? You denied them what they wanted, but since you didn't want what they wanted, they're going to buy the plan B. So I'm getting my point.
No plan B has been presented. No plan B has been presented.
I'm hoping I'm right that you're going to see a better day one day soon, that your lives are going to be better with the canal being fixed, the flood's going to be on, you're not going to see warehouses, and it's going to be a lot better in the future. I hope and pray I'm right. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Mr. Mayor. There go Mr. Robinson.
We're in discussion with the council. I just want the young lady who's talked about she didn't want warehouses in her front yard or backyard or whatever. I just want y'all to know that when I moved out there in Fort Wentworth 34 years ago, I'm a resident of 34 years, and we didn't have any warehouses near me except for the Nortaki China. But now we have Dynacraft, we're going to have Crossgate Logistics, and you can see them really clear. No, that's Port City. Right behind Dynacraft. I'm sorry, Port City. I said that wrong. And then we have Amazon Hub, right in front of us on Crossgate Road. Amazon employs approximately 800 people. I want you to know there was requirements made by Amazon, by us, for Amazon, and we keep that traffic off of Crossgate Road. They use 21, okay? We are addressing traffic issues here. I have warehouses within 1 mile from my house. I live in the subdivision off of Crossgate past the church, off of Falkirk. And, you know, it's been a plus for us. And I have people on this council that didn't want it. And now they see it has improved that area. And it is, and did I want a warehouse in my front yard? No. Was it best for our city? I had to consider that. And I'm not stupid. You know, I try to do, I'm passionate about what I do. I've lived in Port Wentworth for 34 years. I care about our city, and that's why I'm gonna vote yes.
I'll say one thing, Mayor, I'll keep my short story. I don't want anybody out there, especially Miss Benton and her family, to think that I have anything against them. I understand their plight. I lived on Godly Road most of my young adult life with my grandparents. I hunted up the fish, I rode go-karts, motorcycles, everything over there off of Godly Road, which is all woods, all hunting clubs. It's all apartments and cooler. It's all warehouses now, and this and that and the other. So I understand all that. I understand you don't want that. But cities grow by outstretching. And we all have to understand, if we want to live out in the country anymore, we're going to have to move out to the country because the city keeps...
But you got to do it according to the law.
The city keeps expanding.
You got to do it according to the law.
My point is, I may have made some enemies tonight, and I apologize for that. But I have to make the best decision for the whole city, the city as a whole. And I believe that the traffic issue is going to be better because if not a warehouse there, they're going to put one over there at Effingham and more and more and more. The same trucks are going to come up down Highway 21. They're just going to go to the next county, and those people will be paying taxes in the next county. And we get all the monies that we can actually build parks and recreation for our children so that they can have a good life and have something to do. I believe this is a better plan. I don't do this just to vote against you or for them. I vote for the whole city as a whole and for the good. And if you could understand that, fine. And if you don't understand that, that's your opinion. I just wanted to say that.
Mr. Mayor.
All right, let's get back to where we were at.
Mr. Mayor, I know you done closed the public hearing, but before you take that vote, can I say one thing? Or ask a question? Please. Can't hear it?
That would be out of line, Mr.
All right, then. Well, what's the sense of having a planning committee if you guys make the decision?
All right, we've had a motion.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. We had a motion from Councilmember Griner, Councilmember Jones, second. So on tonight, Councilmember Griner, how are you voting?
Yes.
Councilman Stevens?
No.
Mayor Pro Tem Smith?
Yay.
Councilman Jones?
Yes.
Councilman Barbie?
No. Motion passes.
Well, see y'all in Superior Court.
Item C tonight is a site plan review application general for Jasper Village Phase 2.